Jeremiah chapter 16 tonight. And for those watching the live, I apologize, our prayer list took a little longer than usual tonight, so we're getting a little late start. In Jeremiah chapter 16, if you notice the first verse, it says, "The word of the Lord came also unto me, saying." So in other words, this is a continuation of the same sermon. So we read chapter 15 last time, and then we get to chapter 16, and he's saying, "Oh, by the way, this also is what the Lord also told me this." So, kind of would put it in our modern vernacular, if you will. The word of the Lord came also unto me, saying, "Thou shalt not take thee a wife, neither shalt thou have sons or daughters in this place." Now, we think that's kind of odd. Why would the Lord tell his man, his prophet, not to marry? Tells him not to take a wife and not to have children. Because, all the way back in the beginning, the Lord promotes marriage, even for his priests and for his prophets, unlike some religions today that claim to be following the scriptures. They forbid their priests to marry. The Lord has always promoted marriage, even for his priests and for his preachers. And we know now in the New Testament, we know there were some men some of the early missionaries, Paul and some others, who weren't married, at least at the time that we see of their writings. But this for Jeremiah is a different reason, and we're going to see why. There is the Lord has a reason, and it's a logical reason if you stop and think about it, that the Lord gives. Verse 3, "For thus saith the Lord concerning the sons and concerning the daughters that are born in this place, and concerning their mothers that bear them, and concerning their fathers that beget them in this land." The Lord's about to tell him, this is why. This is concerning, what I'm going to tell you is concerning the sons and the daughters, the children that are going to be born in this day, and in the days to come, in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem in particular. There's going to be some really horrible things happen, and it would be better if you didn't have a wife and didn't have children, is what he's going to tell them. "They shall die of grievous deaths. They shall not be lamented, neither shall they be buried, but they shall be as dung upon the face of the earth, and they shall be consumed by the sword and by famine, and their carcasses shall be eaten for the fowls, or shall be meat for the fowls of heaven and for the beasts of the earth." So they're going to die a very horrible death. He says they shall not be lamented. In other words, there's not going to be time for a funeral. There's not going to be any grieving, because everybody's going to be affected by it, and there's going to be the whole families that are going to die during this time. Remember, we talked last time about some of that they were going to die from famine and from the sword and from captivity, during the captivity and all that. Before the captivity, I should say, they were going to die from the sword or from famine or pestilence and other things, because the city's under siege. And remember, up until the time and we'll see this later in the study, but up until the time that the army of Nebuchadnezzar gets to Jerusalem, when they go in and they just totally annihilate all the other cities in Judah. They take some captives, but mostly they just totally annihilate them. When they get to Jerusalem, and remember, Jerusalem is where the royalty, it's just the capital of the nation for one, but it's where the royalty has moved. They've withdrawn from all the other cities and moved to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is a heavily fortified city. It's up until now has been unconquerable. And so they feel safe there. So you got all these wealthy people, if you will, in Jerusalem now. You've got all the priests, the Levites, and all have moved to Jerusalem now. You still got the common people; they're still there, but you got all these other people. There's all these the royalty and the not just in the as far as the king's family and the king's people, but you've also got their servants. You've got the Levites, the priests at the temple. You've got their servants, and you've got the common people, and not just their servants. I should say all their families too are with them. Their wives, children, parents. They're all with them. The city's overrun with people now, and when the army comes, they lay siege to the city. A lot of people are going to starve to death because they're going to run out of food. And so the Lord tells Jeremiah, don't take a wife and don't have sons and daughters. For one, you don't want to have to go through what they're going to go through. The other thing is the Lord doesn't want Jeremiah distracted from what He's got for him to do. He's got a plan for Jeremiah during that time, and he doesn't need all the distraction of. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. Don't misunderstand me. But the Lord just didn't want Jeremiah to have a family to worry about during this time. And if they were to die like everybody else, He doesn't want him to have to spend time grieving over them. So he, verse 5, he says, "For thus saith the Lord, enter not into the house of mourning, neither go to lament, nor bemoan them. For I have taken away my peace from this people, saith the Lord, even loving kindness and mercies." The Lord says, I have taken away my peace from these people. We've talked about that a lot so far in this study. The Lord has removed Himself from the people in Jerusalem because they turned their backs on Him first. The Lord, if you study the Old Testament in particular, you see that when the Lord talks about turning His back on His people, it's every time it's because they turned their back on Him first. And He says He's even loving kindness and mercies. His love's gone from Him. He's done with them. And there's not going to be. He's not going to show any mercy. When this army from the north comes, and remember, the Lord is the one. He said Himself, He was the one that's calling them. He's the one that's bringing them to them. He's the one that's bringing the evil to them. And that's something that today, because of the false teaching that's out there, and sometimes we hear it from other people, and we see it on TV and other places, just in our society as a whole, people don't think God does anything evil to His people. Well, God tells us in Jeremiah, He's the one bringing this evil on His people. How much simpler does it get than that? I mean, there's chapter after chapter in Jeremiah that He comes out and plainly says, I'm the one bringing this evil on my people. And for some reason, people don't think that He won't do it today. We're no better than they are, or than they were. And a lot of the sins that they were involved in, that they were participating in, you see today. And the sad thing is with what's going on today, even if it's as bad as people claim it is, we still don't see any repentance. It's almost what we're seeing today is almost identical to what Jeremiah was seeing. Now, granted, like I said, don't misunderstand. We're not Israel. The United States did not replace Israel. We're not the nation of God. God's people are in this nation, and God used His people to set this nation up. But the United States is not Israel. It is not the replacement for Israel. So don't even go there. But God will still chastise His people. And He may do it through a sickness. He may do it through a war. He may do it some other way. He doesn't promise us He does promise us peace if we're living according to His commandments. And remember, in Jeremiah's day, and we'll see more about this later, but in Jeremiah's day, there was a remnant that held strong and faithful to the Lord. Jeremiah was one of them. There were people, remember, that in Jeremiah's day who through the week were going to the temple even and worshiping other gods. They were worshiping other gods in their homes. They were worshiping other gods on the streets of the city. They remember that he talks about there being altars on every street corner. What do we see today? Now, we know people are, in most places, are locked down. But before that, what did we see? There was altars on every street corner to some god or another on every street corner in most cities. And now that the Lord has brought His chastisement, whether it's His chastisement on His people or it's Him doing something to the rest of the world, we don't know what it is. He doesn't tell us. But obviously His people are suffering through some of this, and some of His people are, it looks as though it's a chastisement on the way people have been, how they've been living. And we see the very same things, like I said, in Jeremiah. And these people in Jeremiah's day, they would go out during the week, worship their false gods, and then on the Sabbath they'd come to the temple and worship what they thought they were worshiping was the true God. Well, He had already turned His back on them because they weren't worshiping Him. Very similar to what we see today. We got people who think they can come to church on Sunday or watch a video on Sunday, a live service on Sunday, or set in their car out in the parking lot. They got drive-in churches now, and then the rest of the week live just as wicked as they did before. Now, verse 6 says, both the great and the small shall die in this land. They shall not be buried, neither shall men lament. Neither shall men lament for them, nor cut themselves, nor make themselves bald for them. Both great and small shall die in this land. Have you noticed there's been quite a few famous people that have died recently because of this virus? Have you noticed that? There's been quite a few famous people, and not just, I'm not talking about just entertainment, but there's been some politicians, there's been, and I'm talking about around the world, not just here in our country, but around the world, that have been physically affected by this. So it's not just the common man that's being affected. It's people who are wealthy that are being affected by it also. There's leaders of countries that are being affected by it. Same in Jeremiah's day. And he says, neither shall men lament for them. People weren't going to feel sorry for them. People weren't going to grieve over their death. Nor cut themselves, nor make themselves bald for them. And this is referring back to the law in Leviticus. We're not going to turn there tonight, but there was an order that part of the grieving process for a man, anyway, was that he was to shave his beard and shave his beard and his head, and that's where this comes from. And when the grieving's over with, let it grow back out. That's not something we commonly practice today, but the Jews do to a point. But even some of them don't. They're not going to cut their locks off now. They're too holy for that, I guess. But that was the part of the law, and it was a custom in Jeremiah's day. Neither shall men tear themselves for them in mourning. Tear themselves for them in mourning. In other words, they're not even going to cry for them. To comfort them for the dead. Neither shall men give them the cup of consolation to drink for their father or for their mother, there was another custom in their day, and it goes back to the law again, that if you were suffering from grief from the loss of a loved one, in some cases you were permitted to drink alcohol, as far as getting drunk. You could go that far with it. It was used to console the grieving. I don't recommend it, but that was one of the customs of their day. That was how they dealt with things. But he says here they're not even going to do that. And in verse 8, thou shalt not also go into the house of feasting, to sit with them, to eat and to drink. They're not even going to participate in the feast, the Jewish feast that they had, the feast that the Lord gave them to follow. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will cause to cease out of this place in your eyes and in your days the voice of mirth, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride. In other words, the Lord's going to take all their happiness away. There's some false teaching out there on this bridegroom and bride. Some trying to tie this to the church and the bride in the New Testament, bridegroom and the bride in the New Testament. This has nothing to do with that. This is an example of joy, because you think about it when a bridegroom and a bride marry, that's the happiest day of their marriage, is their marriage day. All that's going to be taken away. If there are any marriages that take place during that day, they're not going to be happy. It's going to come with grieving because of what's going on. The Lord says, I will cause to cease out of this place. He's causing this to stop. We talked about that earlier. This is the Lord's doing this. It's because of them, but He's the one doing it. Verse 10, and it shall come to pass, when thou shalt show these people all these words, and they shall say unto thee, wherefore hath the Lord pronounced all this great evil against us? And what is our iniquity? And what is our sin that we have committed against the Lord our God? You ever notice that when somebody points out, especially when a preacher points out that, hey, maybe what's going on is because of your sin, and people say, well, what sin did I commit? I've been faithful to the Lord. I've done, I pay my tithe. I go to church. Or, for those that don't go to church, I read my Bible at home. I'll pray with my family. But what else are you doing? He says, wherefore hath the Lord pronounced all this great evil against us? Why was the Lord bringing this? If the Lord has brought some evil against you, and here it looks as though they recognize that it's the Lord that's brought it. If He's brought an evil against you, obviously you're doing something that's not right. He's chastising you for a purpose. And so that's when you need to examine yourself. Look in the mirror. What are you doing wrong? What is our sin that we have committed against the Lord our God? Well, the things that the false worship they were participating in was the biggest thing. They're following after idols. They're following after false gods. That was the biggest thing. The biggest thing in our day too. And notice all this is against the Lord's own people. Not the nations around them, but the Lord's own people. Then shalt thou say unto them, because your fathers have forsaken me, saith the Lord, and have walked after other gods, and have served them, and have worshipped them, and have forsaken me, and have not kept my law. The Lord tells them, here is why. Here's why. Now, remember, Jeremiah is going out and preaching this to the people. Whoever will listen, he's out there preaching it. So they're the ones asking these questions. He's preparing Jeremiah. They're going to ask these questions. So here's the answer you give them. You tell them it's because it goes all the way back. Their forefathers, their fathers are the ones who started this, and it's gotten worse over all these years. It's gotten worse. They've not kept my law. And ye have done worse than your fathers. For behold, ye walk every one after the imagination of his evil heart, that they may not hearken unto me. Where did we see that before in the Scripture? Was it not in the days of Noah? Was it not also in the days of Christ? Is it not also in our day? Because people are walking after the imagination of their own heart, that the world is so evil right now. Therefore will I cast you out of this land into a land that ye know not, neither ye nor your fathers. And there shall ye serve other gods day and night, where I will not show you favor. Now remember, and we'll talk more about this towards the end of the book. You can look in Daniel is a good place to go look. You see where the people, there's a few other books in the latter part of the Old Testament talks a lot about it too. The people, while they're in captivity, are forced to serve other gods. Even when they claim they don't want to, they're forced to, and they go along with it. Remember the 3 young men that went into the fiery furnace? The reason they went into the fiery furnace is because they refused to follow the king's orders and worship the false gods. There were times Daniel himself, they tried to force him to stop praying to God, and he did it anyway. He suffered great persecution for standing firm on what the Lord had told him to do. We're not totally to that point yet today, but it's close. And maybe in some cases we are seeing it. But the sad part is that we've got some of God's own people that are following right along with what's going on. And I say some, I won't say many. Many of God's people are following right along and they have not kept the law, for one. And when it comes time to serve false gods or to serve the Lord, they're going to follow the false gods every time. You'll see it. Verse 14, therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them, and I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. Right now, in Jeremiah's day, their claim to fame is God brought us out of Egypt, brought our forefathers out of Egypt. He performed all these miracles while they were in the wilderness, all these miracles he performed while they were preparing to leave Egypt. That's in their history. That's after they go into captivity, they're going to forget that. The next, I almost want to say dispensation, I don't know what you want to call it, but what the theological term is for it, but the next period in time anyway for Israel is going to be them remembering the Lord bringing them out of captivity, out of the land of the north, and bringing all their people back to the land that He'd given their fathers. They're going to have a new history, in other words, and a new way of thinking as far as the Lord is concerned. It's not going to be look what He did for Moses. It's going to be look what He did for our fathers that come out of captivity, out of Babylon. Verse 16, behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. In other words, He's going to send people out that are going to hunt these people down and bring them back. For mine eyes are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face, neither is their iniquity hid from mine eyes. And first I will recompense their iniquity and their sin double, because they have defiled my land. They have filled mine inheritance with the carcasses of their detestable and abominable things. So the Lord's, even though He's turned His back on them, He's still watching them. He knows who they are. And He also knows their iniquity, He says. In other words, He knows their sin. And He says, and first, I'm going to recompense their sin. In other words, at first, I'm going to chastise them for their sin. And He says, for their recompense their iniquity and their sin double. It's going to be double punishment. Why? Because they defiled the land. Well, how did they defile the land? They brought in false gods. Remember, the Lord purged the land. He used their fathers to purge the land in the beginning, and they took out all of the false gods, or they were supposed to have anyway. And now they've brought all that back. The false gods that the people who were formerly from that land had, they brought them back. We see some of that today. And I'll use our country for an example, because that's the history I know the best, but it happens in other places around the world too. But we see it here today, where you think about the Native Americans and their pagan history, and look at the push. Every so often, every so many years, you see this push to get back to the way it was. And there's some things you don't want to go back to. You know, maybe sometimes there's a way of life. Sometimes we think about it sounds like it was better then, but you don't want to go back as far as spiritual matters go. You don't want to go back to the pagan roots. One of the problems that I learned from the Canadians was, especially in the Northwest Territories, with the natives up there, was they come out of their pagan ways years ago when Catholicism took over up there. And then as the Catholics, their schools and their priests and all that up there began to abuse the children up there that they were in charge of. And now you go up there, and a lot of them have started going back to their former way of life as far as the pagan rituals, because they don't want to know anything about anything to do with Christianity, because all they know as far as Christianity is the evils that the Catholic Church did to them. They tortured those people greatly, and it's not just there, but it's in other countries. You see it, but you don't always want to go back to the way it was, because sometimes, depends on where you're from, the way it was is not godly, and it's worse than what it is now. So he says, because they have defiled my land, they have filled my inheritance with carcasses of their detestable and abominable things. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge, this is Jeremiah speaking, in the day of affliction, my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things where in there is no profit. Shall a man make gods unto himself, and they are no gods? Therefore, behold, I will this once cause them to know. I will cause them to know mine hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is the Lord. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth. And it's almost like they're going to make fun of the Jews for making gods that are really no gods. He says they're false gods. They're foolishness. And he says, behold, I will this once cause them to know. I'm going to cause them to understand that what you're doing is wrong. And they shall know that my name is the Lord. They're going to know the Lord's name. They're going to know who He is. So we'll stop there for tonight. We'll pick up with chapter 17 next time. We'll see chapter 17 is a little longer than what we've been going through. We may have to do it in 2 sections. We'll see. When I sit down to study it, we'll see what the Lord has there. So anyway, we'll be back here again this time next week.